our Wednesday forum today. I think we already live in a YouTube channel, CRCS UGM. Hello, everyone. Good afternoon. We welcome you all in Wednesday forum today, 20 October 2021. This is a weekly discussion forum organized by the Center for Religious and Cross-Cultural Studies, or CRCS, MA program in Religious Studies, and also the Indonesian Consortium for Religious Studies, or ICRS, a PhD program that founded by a consortium of 3 universities, Universitas Gadjah Mada, Universitas Islam Negeri Sunan Kalijaga, and Universitas Kristen Duta Wacana. I will be the moderator of this forum. I'm Jekonia Tarigan, PhD student of ICRS, and our topic today is building a resilient and green economy by capitalizing on biodiversity and culture with textile artisan in East Sumba. I think our Wednesday forum today is very special because we have 2 speakers. Yeah, we are honored to have 2 speakers. The first one is Ibu Chandra Kirana Priyosusilo, or Ibu Kiki, founder of Sekar Kawung, a social enterprise that works closely with local artisans and collaborate with indigenous communities. They continue protecting the biodiversity in indigenous land and create sustainable product for contemporary urban consumers. And our second speaker is Dr. Muhammad Indrawan, or Pak Didi. We can call him Pak Didi. He's a researcher in the Research Center for Climate Change, or RCCC, Universitas Indonesia. And Pak Didi is a lead editor of the book entitled Civil Engagement in Asia, a lesson from transformative learning in the quest for a sustainable future. This book voices a critical view of the SDGs involving activists and public intellectuals from ASEAN and Japan. This volume highlights ASEAN-focused climate change and sustainable development, written by 31 authors from countries in Asia. And one of the writers in this volume is Ibu Kiki. So Ibu Kiki's presentation will be based on her writing too. Therefore, we will have 45 minutes for presentation, but the first one will be for Ibu Kiki. For 30 minutes, Ibu Kiki will deliver her presentation, and after that, Pak Indrawan or Pak Didi will also explain about the book and the research related to the book, Civic Engagement in Asia. So after 45 minutes, we will have session for question and answer, and you can type your question in the Zoom chat box or in live chat in YouTube, or after the presentation, you can raise your virtual hand and directly ask to the presenters. So without further ado, we give time to Ibu Kiki for the next 30 minutes, and after that, immediately can continue by Pak Didi for the second session. Please, Ibu Kiki.
Thank you, Pak Jeko. Thank you, everyone, for having me in this forum. It's a great pleasure to be able to share here with you. I will be using a PowerPoint presentation. So without further ado, because we don't have much time, I think I can open the sharing. Oops, no. You can see my screen, but Can you see my presentation? Not yet.
Not yet.
Okay, wait a minute. It's not. I will stop sharing first and then bring it back again. So share. No. Oof, I wonder what is happening here. So there is my. Here it is. There you go.
Okay.
So good afternoon. Thank you for having me. In this opportunity, I share a story about our work in East Sumba, working with artisans, textile artisans in a village in the Canberra area. Canberra area is an area close to the seaport, a very old seaport in East Sumba. And the textiles here are some of the most vibrant textiles in East Sumba compared to other textile centers in the district. So the title of my presentation is Building a Resilient and Green Economy by Capitalizing on Biodiversity and Culture with Textile Artisans in East Sumba. And I would like to say that only when we strengthen the roots can we enjoy the abundance of flowers, the bounty of fruits, and vibrant seeds for growth. We learned this in our 3 years of this project implementation. So I would like to introduce Sekar Kawung, our social enterprise. We focus on exploring the nexus between biodiversity and culture for sustainable development. We have observed over many years how biodiversity shapes culture and also culture shapes the biodiversity in all of the areas where Indigenous people live and traditional communities are still living that we have encountered in Indonesia. We have observed that traditional communities have a very strong bond with the biodiversity held within their living landscapes, and they have a genius in using this creatively and wisely, including for economic needs. In the past, they often had dual-track economies. Subsistence in the sense that they fulfill all of their needs from the landscape, be it for textiles, for architecture, for food, for hunting and agriculture tools, to create even transport vehicles, for medicine, for spiritual activities, as well as for economic needs. But the economic needs in the past never outweighed all of the other needs. So they would seem to manage their landscapes in quite a balanced way. However, now there's a drive to use the landscape to fulfill economic needs alone, and then with the money try to fulfill all of the other needs. And this is the approach that we see being used by many sustainable development programs that often focus on the market-oriented economy in the villages and try to bring sustainability to the market-driven landscape management systems. So we see programs such as sustainable palm oil or organic monoculture farming, etc. We in Sekar Kawung work the other way around. We focus first on strengthening the subsistent economy and work to use the surplus to build financial prosperity. Because we notice that a strong subsistent economy is almost always ecologically sustainable and culturally very rich, both of which can form the capital as a strong driver for sustainable economic development. So that's us in a nutshell. In East Sumba, we worked to look at the relationship between biodiversity and culture, especially for the textiles, or the textile culture. Our project cycle was for 3 years, from 2016 to 2019. Our goal was to create a robust village tourism sector that improved the quality of ikat textiles, the quality of the environment, and the quality of people's social and economic life at the same time. Initially, it was an 18-month project, but it extended to almost 3 years. The funding for it came from MCAI through Samdana Institute to the magnitude of about $600,000 US. What we tried, our approach was to strengthen the culture, protect and restore the land, build a community-based tourism sector, and focus on opening markets. My presentation will describe how we carried this out. First, I will give you, though, a bit of a context and approach, the approach that we used. The village that we worked in, named Lambanapu, is considered by government as quite a poor village. At the project inception, the average income of people was 900,000 a month. The average education level of adults was 5.5 years, so very few people actually even had a primary school education. But they were very highly skilled in traditional textile making, including the art of natural dyes, especially in producing bright red and blues, and a deep knowledge of about how the plants needed for the dye process grow and need to be processed. However, they had very poor access to market at the time. So according to the formal data, the artisans we worked with are poor, uneducated, and ignorant. But we don't believe this. From our perspective, they are masters in their art of living and genius in many ways. This is what we focused on to nurture in our journey to co-creatively build a green, resilient, and sustainable village economy based on their culture and their biodiversity. Our main approach was participatory, intergenerational dialogue and involvement. We became part of the community as well. We set up an office not far from the village, and every day spent our days interacting with the village people. We also worked with all the different generations. We first started with children, the age of 10 to 15-year-old, through a 3 months photography education. And then with these children, 20 of them, 10 boys and 10 girls, we created a photography exhibition and a cultural week, which the entire community and people from neighboring villages actually participated in. We also had a long-term education or training system for youth to really delve into their textile making culture with the help of Jaladwara. Jaladwara is a social enterprise that focuses on culture tourism or culture education, basically through tours in museums, but also to various cultures in Indonesia. For the adults, we actually carried out an 18-month process of participatory study where we deeply looked into their textile culture to dig and learn from the elders about the meaning, about the process. And with all of the different ages, we carried out a land restoration program and also complemented the project with infrastructure, building various facilities in the village. So that's our main approach. I'll start by explaining a bit to you about the children education. So we had master photographers living in the village for 3 months, and we worked with 2 schools, a primary school and one a junior secondary school, and worked with the teachers to select 10 girls and 10 boys who had a passion in drawing to become the students of this photography classes. Every day after school, they would come to our classes, and we would have lunch for them first, and then they would have their classes. And after they mastered the art of photography, the afternoons were spent traveling through the village and documenting it through their eyes. They also each had one camera, which they could take home and also take pictures as much as they liked. After 3 months, they also learned how to describe or write, tell the story about their pictures, write captions. So they basically learned how to tell the world their perspective of their village. After 3 months, we had an exhibition in the grounds of one of the primary schools, and it was accompanied by a village textile exhibition as well. You can see over here all of the weavers in the village with their textiles, and also a launching, and 3 nights and 4 days of cultural sessions where anyone in the village could present dances, poetry, and whatever. So here are the children launching their book. So the exhibition also was there was 50 photos selected for the exhibition, which were also made into the book. So our aim here was to really instill in the children a love and appreciation for their culture, but also pride in it, and also pride in themselves, because now these children forever will be able to put in their curriculum vitae that they authored a book about their village culture at the age of 10 to 15 years old. So here are the youth preparing for some dancing. And here in the nighttime, the children are giving a presentation of their process, their creative process of creating the book. Here are some other kids presenting dancing. And you can see here that the exhibition was even attracting people during the night. So the children were the guides for this exhibition. More than 3,000 people from the village and 3 neighboring villages, and even the district, came to this exhibition to see the art, to see the photography prepared by the children. So, and for the youth, I'll go back. So these children, the 20 children that created this book and this exhibition, went on to participate in a multi-stakeholder process with government, with politicians, with teachers, the education office of the district, to create 4 books for muatan lokal. Muatan lokal is, I don't know what it is in English, But for fourth grade primary school, they created 4 books for the teacher. 1 was for the teacher and 3 were for the children to learn about the history of their textiles, the different motifs, and the art of natural dyes, which is now part of the formal curriculum in East Sumba. So for the youth, we created a long-term program with Eka Tresnawan and Jaladwara. These are 2 social enterprises that focus on cultural tourism and also very responsible and sustainable tourism. They spent we had 2-week courses sometimes at intervals where the youth would learn the skills, but also actively role play, taking our friends mostly, around and on tours to learn and explain the art of textile making. Most young people in the village at the time did not want to become weavers and did not really appreciate weaving because of its association with low income. Like if you become a weaver, oops, something's happening here. I'm sorry, I can't see the, I'm sorry. So here is with the youth. So they became, through this process, they became reacquainted with the richness of their own cultural heritage. And also not only in terms of textiles, but also food and potential fruits in the village that could be used to prepare dishes for the tourists that they would be catering to in the future. Here's the tamarind. They're working with tamarind because tamarind trees are very profuse in East Sumba. They grow almost wildly, and the fruit is not really appreciated or used. So in the project, we included that tamarind into the program as a special drink that could be served to people when they came to learn about the village culture. So that's with the youth. And with the adults, we did a participatory research to document the symbols on their textiles, because after spending a few months in the village, we realized that each piece is actually quite unique. Each individual piece of textile in East Sumba is a creative product created by each individual artisan, and they almost never create the same piece again. There will always be a variation in the next piece that they produce. We noticed that this was very different from batik in Java, for example, where you would have fixed pieces, like you would have in Java, what would you say, a Kawung pattern would be almost the same on the whole piece of textile would always be almost the same. But in East Sumba, each piece of textile would be unique and individual. So to try to understand them, we actually documented the meaning of each small picture or symbol on each piece of textiles. We read together 50 pieces of traditional textiles And from that, we were able to create a dictionary of 42 different symbols. And then we used the symbol dictionary to read the meaning of the 50 pieces. We also documented the ikat cloth creative process and created new pieces using the insight from the research to prepare for an exhibition 18 months after. Then we held a traditional textile art exhibition in Jakarta featuring 7 designers, and also held a textile art auction with the help of Siddhartha Auctioner, one of Indonesia's highly regarded art auctioners. The process of building the self perception of the textile artisan as an artist, as a master who is carrying out a art process was a very important part of our intervention. So this is a snippet of the dictionary we created, and it was very insightful for all of the different designers and artisans, because from here they began to really realize that each person has their own style. We have 2 of the different symbols of the 42 in this slide, which is the rooster and habak. Habak is a symbol of the hardworking woman. Here we have 4 different artists making very clearly different styles of the habak. And you see the rooster here, everyone has very different styles as well. We also learned that each cloth holds a deep purpose. We learned from the 50 pieces that we read with the dictionary that we found 3 categories of textile. We found that some pieces focused on giving a blessing. Some pieces focused on relaying a lesson or relaying some wisdom. Some pieces described a story. So this piece, this is an old piece. You can't find this one very easily anymore. It has the seahorses on the ends and hiamba roti, that's a kind of flower. So this is a blessing of good luck and beauty. So the hiamba roti flower is a symbol of beauty, and the seahorse is a symbol of good luck. This is also a piece that is very rarely produced anymore now. I don't know, we weren't able to, I know some of the translation of these symbols on it. Matahutar, urai paita. Urai paita is the flower of the bitter gourd, a forest bitter gourd. Kadundu is star. Matahutar and hiabahau. I don't know the translation of these symbols, but together this piece combined symbolizes the importance of safeguarding the balance between heaven and earth. And some pieces tell a story. The most common story told is this one, which is the burial of a king and the queen attending it with her royal umbrella. But each papanggang ikat textile telling this story is always quite unique. This one was designed by Cornelis Ndapakamang. It's a very beautiful piece. We also, with the artisans, delved into really understanding the whole creative process. We were astonished to realize that to make one tenun ikat, in East Sumba, they went through 42 steps. Each needs a special skill. We were able to cluster the 42 steps into 6 major activities. And all of these activities enabled us to identify new economic opportunities. We also learned that men and women play a very important role in ikat making, and learned that more than 20 plants are used to make the ikat in East Sumba. So the 6 major activities are yarn making, designing, and then you applying the blue color, applying the red color, weaving the pieces together, and finishing the piece with a different kind of weave called kabakil at the end. When you don't pay attention to all of these 6 categories, like so many interventions in the past have focused on the weaver only. So they introduce factory-made yarn, introduce chemical dyes, give it to the ikat weaver. They actually kill all of these other jobs or what is it in English? all of these roles in the village, the other roles. There's only about 2 or 3 people who still make yarn in the village when we were doing our work, and they were actually almost losing their livelihoods, because weavers were focusing much more on just buying factory-made yarn. But through this study and revitalization, we started developing and exploring with the yarn makers and combining them with the natural dye experts to make all sorts of different colors of yarn. And these are actually quite highly demanded by sort of the art and craft community in big cities. So the yarn makers are able to begin selling to new yarn markets. They can also teach their art to travelers. And they also create a new stream of income for cotton growers, create a new stream of income for coloring experts. The multiplier ecological effect is that it encourages locals to protect and plant natural dried dye trees and begin to revisit producing the fiber as well. We also worked very closely with the designers. We found that in the village, it's actually the designer that holds the whole sort of economic structure and of different people together in the ikat making process. Also, it became very clear, if we wanted to encourage any innovation, that the best person to work with, who would have the most impact, is with the designer.
Ibu Kiki, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
You have 5 minutes more.
5 minutes more. Oh, okay, I'll try to be very fast. Then there's the blue expert. The blue expert has a very important role as well, and working with them also helps to create a lot of new economic possibilities and multiplier effects, as well as effects on ecological effects as well. And the red expert, they use morinda root, but they need many other different plants to make the red color, this bright red in East Sumba. One plant they use is the candle nut. So when I first visited NTT, I thought that people really must like curries and so forth, because there were so many candle nut trees that I could find. But in fact, they don't. They use candle nut to bring out the red color as a mordant. The ikat weaver is also important. And then there's the kabakil weaver. Kabakil is the end here of the piece of textile. And just by focusing on the kabakil alone, they develop, it can be used as an independent product in fashion and also in jewelry. So just a few numbers about the exhibition. We finally had an exhibition in Jakarta as a result of that process and the pieces that they produced after that process. The exhibition had 1,675 visitors. It earned the group 677 million rupiah over the 2 weekends of the exhibition. Design students made their final projects on East Sumba. As a result, 6 bikes were donated and 500 catalogs were sold. So these were the ikat designers that we focused, that we featured in the exhibition. This was the catalog of the art auction. It was also opened with a fashion show where the textiles were none of these were cut. They were all drapery pieces. And the result was that in the village, we were able to not only strengthen the heritage of the cultural roots, but also encourage land rehabilitation with the plants that they needed and also economic improvement. These are the buildings we created. There's a homestay. This is a natural dye workshop. There was tamarind syrup and jam, etc. What else? The restoring of the land, we planted about 3,649 seedlings in 21 hectares of land owned by 87 farmers, but the dry season killed most of those. And this is the economic impact after 2 years of the project. The traditional ikat sales to the group during the project reached 985 million. New product sales reached 100 million. Cordial and jams reached 56 million. And in total, it was 1 billion rupiah, almost 143 million. New businesses created were this ikat workshop collection, a youth tourism initiative, the homestay, a botanical garden, and a tamarind cordial production unit. Not all have survived because now it's like many more years afterwards. This is the youth Maila Humba cultural tour group. It has now dispersed. The youth who were involved in it have moved all over the place, but a number of them have remained key actors in the sector. So lessons learned. Culture can contribute to economic development significantly, as well as biodiversity, and it needs more attention from policymakers. And it is important to go deep, truly study to understand the culture. And then when we do this, numerous potential will be identified. When it comes to landscape improvement and land restoration, it's very important to focus on the people and have them really understand what it is behind this that is driving why we need to really plant the trees. And when the people really realize it, they will carry it on. Special focus will be need to given to land restoration over the long term, and government needs to give more support to this as well. We have continued the project as we noticed that it needs to be continued. So we still work with the artisans here today. But we know that when the spirit of the local culture is strong, the creativity in the community blooms. There's been a lot of new developments that were like totally beyond our imagination in the village that are happening now. But also donors, government need to focus more on strengthening the women while paying attention and acknowledging the role of the men as well. But women do need special support in promoting their work once they have entered the real market. So that's, I guess, the end of my presentation. We had a very good team, of course, which now is not there anymore because teams need to be paid, but we have 3 people still working with the people in East Sumba now. So I guess I'll stop sharing and return it back to you, Pak Jeko. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you so much for your presentation, Ibu Kiki. And now we have our second speaker, Dr. Muhammad Indrawan. Please, Pak, you can start now. I already share your PowerPoint.
Yeah. Good afternoon, everyone. Yeah, thanks so much for the opportunity to discuss and share, especially for the organizers, for ICRS and CCRS, and of course to all the participants. I'm not really a speaker. I come here with this nice invitation from Pak Diki Sofian to introduce the book. And even with the book, I'm not really an editor. In Bahasa Indonesia, I'm called Civic, or the one who types everything. So the named editors includes Jeffrey Loser, Helen Hanna, and Theodore Meyer. So in regard to the presentation that just completed, Mbak Kiki, I call her Mbak Kiki. She has provided excellent context, deeper context. So if you do not have time to read the book, you can reflect on her presentation. Of course, it's much better if you can reflect on the entire book. So what I'm going to do is very briefly to highlight the framework as presented by the book. I will introduce the book and made several comments. The comments actually I discussed already with Pak Diki and Kuntet. So next slide, please. Yeah, thank you, Pak Jeko. So the why? The background is has to do with chronic disconnection, especially the state and non-state actors, whether it is policymakers, local government, academic institutions, civil society, including grassroots, as we have just seen. Thank you. So together, we have been thinking how to foster changes, that is to raise the collective awareness and increase consciousness toward sustainability. So the book is a collaborative project to address lacunae in civic engagement. Next, please. Okay, thank you. Yeah, this is the comments for the book, and it is called Civic Engagement in Asia, Lessons from Transformative Learning in the Quest for a Sustainable Future. We are very proud that this edited volume is collaborated with Chulalongkorn University, APN, Asia Pacific Network for Global Change Research, who is a very strong supporter of this kind of multi-stakeholder initiative. And of course, Research Center for Climate Change, Universitas Indonesia. I already named the editors. Next, please. Yeah, I'm sorry, I'm not going to read everything. I'm not because of the time constraints. If you don't mind, please kindly read. But I will just while you are reading, I'll just name several, and this is random. For instance, number 3, the hardware of ecological sustainability in the Asian context. This is very interesting, whereby the hardware means connecting the nexus between nature and culture, and therefore includes the very important and now increasingly recognized spirituality. So that is one chapter. And the other, if you are interested more to know about Mbak Kiki, her name is of course Chandra Kirana. It's number 7. You can see number 7 that explain about traditional textile artisans connected with biodiversity, knowledge, and markets, and above all, supports the all-important gender perspective. And also we have number 12, Citizen Initiative in the Fukushima Radiation Disaster, Measuring and Sharing Fukushima by Mariko Komatsu. This is also another example of how civic engagement can be made by concerned citizens. Here, they teach themselves how to use the radiation measurement tool, namely the Geiger counter. So they explain how citizens can be equipped by improving their science learning on their own. Okay, the next, please, the next page. Yeah. This include number 17. Number 17, in these troubled times, could every classroom become a site of transformation? The story of the SENSE program. And this is really amazing because SENSE itself stands for School of Engage. This is the keyword. Engage English Social Service. And they are working in connection with School of Engage Buddhist. So they are fostering learning in many ways. In Indonesia, we call it kind of freedom campus, campus merdeka, but they have their own concept similar. And we have youth number 18 and 19. They are at the time writing, they are maybe 21, 22, 21. So yeah, a very personal story you can read. And then in closing, we have the living legend, Ibu Erna Witular from Indonesia. She wrote about civic engagement for a just and sustainable ASEAN. So here not only she shared her deep wisdom from decades, many decades of experience, but she also demonstrated that SDGs are local, meaning that each locality have their own content. So this is the book that one reviewer, Julian Caldecott, appreciate very much because it draws on the life and work experiences of expert observers in diverse social and geographical circumstances across Asia. So we are very happy with that comment. Next, please. I have 2 more slides and I will go very quickly. Yeah, next, please. Next, please. We can, yeah. So this is about the context of civic engagement. The context of civic engagement, according to Hapsari from Maharani Apsari from Universitas Gadjah Mada, it is a political project that calls for the ability to deal with both structural and cultural challenges to the sustainability agenda. So we see here the importance of civil society actors in providing the important lever. And it has to do with co-production of knowledge. Ibu Chandra Kirana, Mbak Kiki already demonstrated through, for instance, the photo project, the co-production of knowledge and transformative learning. They are, we can see from her story how they are important basic premise for meaningful civic engagement. So the key here is there is a mutual learning platform to reflect on tacit knowledge, experience, local stories, and narrative. And above all, there should be effective collaboration and synergy among actors and participants in order for sustainable development learning to take place across local communities. Next, please. This is the last slide. Oh, sorry, 2 slides before that. So it seems that I skipped 1 slide. Go back 2 slides, please. Yes, and before that, okay. So before, no. Next, please. Yeah, thank you. So before we talk about civic engagement, it is probably best we talk about transformative learning. And sorry, I am losing my screen now. Okay, it come back. So transformative learning is achieved through inclusive multi-stakeholder discussion, especially interrogations of deeply embedded beliefs and perspectives. So as mentioned, there is co-production of knowledge involving clashing of cultural assumptions. So we must let them clash in order for similarities to emerge. So we are talking about the search for meaning and genuine solutions to focus for a balanced form of collective action. And to achieve transformative learning, there is this iterative process. In our case, it has been regional, participatory, and meaningful exchanges. And this kind of transformative learning has been explained in classic essay by Jack Mezirow. So we are showing how true Jack Mezirow's assessment have been. And at the same time, we are demonstrating the serious allocation of time, energy, investment, and resources over an extended period of time. We all see how Mbak Kiki have struggled for many weeks and many months and becoming years to realize that. And that is the character of a true public intellectual. So very happy to reflect on Mbak Kiki's work and put the context of this edited volume together. I think next slide to end. Next slide, please. Yeah. So no. Yeah. So we have this process with Chulalongkorn University and Kota Kita Solo with ICR, as we call it, Civic Engagement 4.0, Dignity, Justice, and Sustainability. Thank you so much for the opportunity, for the organizer, and for the audience. Thank you. Yeah, Pak Jeko.
Thank you, Ibu Kiki and Pak Didi, for a great presentation. We learned so much this afternoon, and now it is the time for all participants to ask question to both of our presenter. You can type in the chat box or maybe also in the live chat. I think we have one question actually, Pak Didi. Maybe it's already in the very last PowerPoint from Rasita Harsauria, if I'm not mistaken. Where can we buy the book? Simple question.
Yeah, can we go to the final slide, please, Pak Jeko? Sorry to ask again. And I notice we have Pak Diki Sofyan here. So anyone, you can ask me a question, Mbak Kiki, but maybe Pak Diki will help. So the book is published by Pustaka Obor, and there is the information here, and WhatsApp is 089, sorry, 085951501625, 085951501625. Otherwise, email to pustakaobor1@gmail.com. And if I may explain, this book is now being published by Springer, and maybe the price will be, because Springer is international edition, maybe it will not maybe it will be in USD, and if in USD, maybe it will be probably 10 times the price of the book in Indonesia. So if you are interested, please buy using Indonesian rupiah first. If you have USD, you can also spend for the international edition if you want. Thank you.
Thank you, Pak Didi. So already explained where we can buy, and maybe okay. Now we can ask more questions from all participants. I need to see the live chat also. Okay, not yet.
Can I ask a question?
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Mbak Kiki, yeah. Thank you, moderator, Pak Jeko.
Please,
yeah,
Pak,
with your
please.
permission, Pak Jeko. And I'm also waiting for Pak Diki to hear his voice once again. But Mbak Kiki, this been for quite a while that you leave the community, and I know that you have been monitoring them. But what do you think is your greatest kind of legacy, or your greatest, to be modest, your greatest contribution that is sustainable legacy or contribution that is sustainable for the local. I know you have been helping them to engage with marketing outlet and even with marketplace. But what do you think is your most satisfactory outcome?
Please, Ibu Kiki.
Yeah. Thank you, Pak Jeko, Pak Didi, for the question. I think the biggest satisfaction is the realization that the process that we went through really inspired people to believe in themselves and really see the value in their culture. And they have been carrying it on, like the Paluanda Lama Hamu group split into two, but that isn't a bad thing, I don't think, in the end, because the spin-off has become one of the destinations in East Sumba for anyone who wants to study natural dye processes. We also built a small homestay not far from the natural dye workshop. And we have textile artists often from all over the world, not us, the community, visiting and staying and exchanging. Also, many of the artisans now have Instagram, so I can see through Instagram the progress. The institutions we tried to artificially create during the project life cycle because of being donor driven aren't there anymore, some of them. But the impacts and the people are creating their own institutions, which is much better because it's them owning the process of change. So I think economic development continues, planting of trees continues, and the text continues. The last, I would like to share just the last slide here to answer your question. Can you see this?
Yes.
This piece is a new piece created after the project closed by the lead designer in Paluanda Lama Hamu, who is Cornelis Ndapakamang. It is based on the pinang. Like in East Sumba, everybody, when they visit, they bring a gift of pinang, and they also always give pinang to the visitor. This is betel nut. If you cut it down the center, this is what it looks like. And he created this piece to describe how East Sumba people, when they exchange pinang, it means that they are creating a bondage of kinship. You become family, you become keluarga. And I think that's a beautiful value to design into the cloth. So that's an impact, I think, of the process we went through. Incidentally, financially, that piece does really, really well too. Like the workshop can't keep up with the pesanan because so many people want this new design. So I think the pride and the self, for a community, the culture is the personality, and now they have their own strong personality. That's what I like. Thank you, Pak.
Thank you.
Thank you, Pak Didi and Ibu Kiki. And now we have Pak Anchu, who already raised his virtual hand. Please, Pak Anchu.
Thank you, Mas Jeko. Thank you very much. Thank you, Bu Kiki dan Pak Didi. Very interesting. I would start with Bu Kiki for the very inspiring work and also presentation. The case that you're doing, I mean, you're presenting the work that you have been doing is among what we have been actually thinking here, CRCS and SCRS, I mean, studying about religion and culture. So I would start with the things that you discuss about, like symbol being made. As you describe, a symbol is a creative that shows that it is not something, it is personal, contextual, always new. So it is like always renew, recontextualize the personality of the designers, of the makers, of the people. And that is very, very significant, theoretically speaking, understanding about symbols. How do they relate themselves into the diversity, and so the cosmology? How do they become very creative in unifying the very complex of world view into a symbol that they always do? And so I think I am going to ask you to make reflection on that for us to really understand in a way that I'm not trying to force you to come into our circle, into our discussion about culture and religion. But I'm just curious if you have some ideas, like the way we study culture, the way we study religion, like the dominant ways of studying culture, studying religion, and so also policies in relation to make, like what to do with cultures. And so my point on that is that this is very important because it reminds me some work, some Indonesian is explaining about that Indonesia is basically what cultural interaction, willing to receive, willing to navigate, willing to explore any kinds for them to make it contextual to their own. And there is also a new book from our colleague here at ICRS, that people of Indonesia living in a sacred cosmos, because the way they understand their life is to basically very contextual to what they relate to, not only to human being, but to the biodiversity. And so, like the way you understand the symbols, how meaningful they are to the people, and how do they behave with regard to the symbols they are creating, like creating their behaviors in responding to the world they live in. Thank you, Ibu. I would, yeah, thank you. Let's start with Ibu.
Thank you very much. That's a difficult question, I think. I'm not a scholar, but I grew up in a very traditional farm village in Java, where people were still very closely related to their ecosystem and the symbolism that grew out of that relationship between humans and the ecosystem. My grandmother, I guess, imbued in me a knowing about the importance of this relationship. And as I have been working in development over the years, I realized that that is the missing link. The knowing and the relationship between the human being and nature is severed, it's lost. And in that first circle that I created, where biodiversity, the ecosystem, actually provides the human being everything from spirituality, food, clothes, everything, plus money. But now it's the money that has become really big. Everything else is gone away. And this became very clear when I work with village communities or artisans or anything, it's always a very feeling and deep listening process. I don't have much theoretical knowledge to be able to tell you whose theory or what theory I am speaking to, but through the very deep listening with them and just discussing plants or what is at hand, like with the textiles. If we have a piece of textile and say, okay, tell me how many plants you use to make this, and they will tell me, and then where do they grow? And they will tell me, and a story will grow from there. Like the plants that they use for all of their pieces in the past were plants that nature provided for. But now they need to start planting them or protecting nature so that they will have them. Like the background that I had to create for this proposal actually looked at data from the Ministry of Forestry Office of land cover in East Nusa Tenggara over the decade of 80s and 90s. And the places there started losing land cover like crazy when the government started to focus on cattle instead of textiles. Whereas if you look at the holistic culture, textiles and cattle are just the same, have the same importance. The holistic culture, the feminine side of it is reflected in textiles, not the woman's side, the feminine side. And the masculine side, not the man's side, the masculine side. You have masculine and feminine in women and in men. But when the government decided to focus on only cattle, you could see the land cover going down like this. And when you look at the village that uses chemical dyes, it's not as green as the village that uses natural dyes. And the villages now in East Sumba are just like small little oases in a sea of savanna that is really, really dry. And when I first went there, I would notice, like, if there's a new house in the hills, trees would grow around it profusely. So I started talking to them and asking, berarti di sini subur sebenarnya. Oh iya, subur, tapi nggak bisa tumbuh because of the cattle. So what we tried to do was was just to revitalize the importance of the textiles in the minds of the people. Symbols was one way. When we started talking about the symbols, and at the end of that participatory process, when we had the dictionary and when we actually went back with the dictionary to read the 50 pieces, they were like, oh, our ancestors, our elders actually had this in mind when they were making these textiles. We have been making it only for the market. We have been making it designs that we think the tourists will like. But after that process, we said, okay, now we have like 1 year for you all to make the best pieces you ever made. And we'll hold an exhibition for you. But you will have to bertanggungjawabkan as the artists behind those pieces to tell the story of the pieces that you made. And that process even to the process of making the portraits of all of the designers is I think the self-inquiry about what you're talking about, you know, being deeply personal and understanding the philosophy behind the cultural heritage that they had in the past. So it's like digging and sewing back the integrity of the, I guess, the body and the mind and the soul of the spirit of the culture in the textiles that happened during this process. And it wasn't something that I can say, I can't explain. I think I will need the help of scholars to be able to put a more scientific framework in saying whose theory was this and what approach. Basically just deep listening and exploring together and bringing to the market. I hope that answers you a bit.
Jeko, if I may continue, Jeko, little.
Okay, please, Pak.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Bu Kiki. I think that is very scientific. I mean, to me, that is very theoretical, the way you explain what you explain, very theoretical. And I want to continue a little bit, and I think I would ask later, but Didi to reflect on this. I mean, if we understand the symbol like as a creative manifestation of the ecology through the people, they are creating ecology as we see through symbols. The people are the creator, they are creative. And so for the case, what we see is basically what the story that you say, that the cattle is now become more interesting and also dominating. We could see it's like a critics to that, and also critics to the development, to critique to the economic development, and even I think to the narration of the sustainable development. And this is where I would like to ask Pak Didi to reflect on that. And so like to what point that we could imagine these creative persons, people creating, manifesting the ecology into practice through symbols of what they're doing as the subject, the main subjects of development. Market is one way, as you said, is one way of doing that.
Yeah.
And I think challenges that we have seen when we bring it to market always bring opportunities, but also challenges. Competition is very real there. And so I was also thinking like if we could some other alternatives, languages, ways through which we could bring or we could see these people as the main subjects of sustainable development. I really appreciate your work. I mean, your experience give us so much lesson for us to see. And so that is a thing, and that is probably very related to the books that Pak Diki was presenting to. So reflecting sustainable development is DG's community engagement into thinking about making these persons as the main subject of whatever we mean by sustainable development. Do you have any wisdom, Pak, Bu Kiki, and then Pak?
Pak Didi, would you like to go first?
Please, Mbak Kiki, this is your area of expertise, whereby Mbak Kiki has the expertise. She has a very strong psychology education, and this is very important for sustainable development. I will add if I could. So please.
I don't know if I can answer it, but I will try to respond, Pak Samsu. First, I will respond to you didn't ask it this way, but why the market? Yeah. Why did we choose the market? And how can we really make the people the subject of or the drivers, the people in control of creating sustainable development in the village? It's so complex. Everything is so complex, and market is now in the mind of everybody. Money is the, what would you say, ace card for everyone. Like,
Yeah.
I'll give you a bit of a story from Jambi, where I am now working with a forest-based community. There I'm working on the ethnobotany of food to keep what I call keystone species of plants safe so that the environment can be maintained at an ecological balance. They are cutting down important trees that have held a very precious place in their food culture for centuries. And when you ask every single person I asked about why they cut down these trees, they say, "Ndak dosenyo, tidak ada uangnya, no money in it." Yet when we worked with them to understand what were the most important foods in their culture, food plants in their culture, all of these trees were the most important. And the same applies in East Sumba. Like in East Sumba, everyone was like, money, 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 money. Indigenous people as well. So, and it's not fair to say, okay, you're indigenous and you're like, you have all of these values. You have to be the ones who keep your values. Don't think of money. Enggak bisa. They think about money. So I think sustainable development is a fine dance of trying to balance a rekindling of that notion of our relationship to nature and how nature sustains us, and the ability to also be able to earn money from it. This is why we had art auction. When I talk about textiles, I never want to talk about how to make that competitive with fast fashion. Like in East Sumba now, I'm beginning to work to create a system where, say, this piece is made from piece silk, from the cocoon of the Atlas Attacus moth, and sustainable yarn. So if we create a system whereby anyone around the world who wants a very special piece of textile for their wedding or for the christening of their child or for a 17, coming out party, they can pesan, they can order to a very highly skilled textile artisan from East Sumba. So the best of the past, how can it reach the best markets? They don't have to compete. Like what I'm saying is, like, to them, only the weavers in East Sumba in the whole world of 7 billion people and more can make the East Sumba textiles the way you make them. And that is special. And in today's day of internet and artificial intelligence, the Internet of Things, I mean, you can reach those markets. But people, like I guess, people like us need to begin figuring out how can we be the translators, the market translators for these people who have these really high skills to deliver to the world, to Emma Watson. Emma Watson yesterday interviewed Al Gore in preparation for the climate whatever, in a dress made with sustainable cotton, printed specifically in Italy. You know, this is possible. This is possible, and we need to make it possible, but we need to take it out of the box of current markets. So, yeah, that may be a very roundabout question, but that's where I'm Sekar Kawung is thinking, and Sekar Kawung is working with trying to create blockchain processes, for example, for forest-based products and highly cultural-based products for the market.
Thank you, Ibu. Thank you very much.
Okay, maybe Pak Didi, you have something.
Thank you, Pak Jeko and Pak Samsul, Marif, for Pak Samsul making a head spinning question. It's very good. Pak Samsul, I can only provide a rather short response, and maybe Pak Diki Sofyan can help here. But my short response is, I agree with Mbak Kiki that to some extent we are economic beings. We need all this livelihood. However, also I subscribe to Pak Diki's perspective. He wrote in the book chapter called The Hardware of Sustainability. So it includes the nexus between nature and culture. So often our nature is connected with our culture, including our faiths, our beliefs, our religion. So it is the hardware. They are the hardware. And with regard to us as intellectual beings, we also undergo transformative learning. In chapter 4, by Ms. Supai Yaimuang from Thailand. She wrote about transformative learning for Thailand's small-scale farmers. And interestingly, Pak Samsul, she highlighted the importance of development of knowledge. But along the way, it is, since we are talking about development, it also includes innovation. So development of knowledge and innovation. Also, farmer organization, how we organize ourselves. And then finally, she emphasized about policy advocacy. These are the key ingredients, maybe not exclusive, maybe in different contexts, different ingredients, but in the case of Thailand's small-scale farmers, those are the three key ingredients. And to conclude, if we are talking about sustainable development, about transformative learning to achieve that, and about how transformative learning go via civic engagement, then we are talking about three things: dignity, justice, and sustainability. And if I may additionally connect with my almost 30 years of field experience with the indigenous people in Central Sulawesi, some communities are very strong in their socio-ecological connections mentioned before as hardware of sustainability. So some some communities maybe like Ngatatoro, Kajang, Badui, and so on, willing to forego the economic willing to forego classical economic short-term benefit for the longer-term benefit in light of dignity, justice, and sustainability. They have the intuition and they have the wisdom. I hope that answered Pak Samsul Marif. Many thanks again. And also Pak Jiko for the opportunity, Mbak Kiki for her knowledge.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Pak.
Yeah. I think we have come to an end of our forum today, but we still have one question, especially for Ibu Kiki from Mbak Elidia Praptanti. She typed here, having an attention to religion and ecology field, may I ask Bu Chandra, do you think this green or cultural movement will one day have an influence on religion to absorb this and give birth to theology or liturgy that love nature more? Yeah, considering that we have lack of natural symbol in certain religion. Please, Ibu Kiki. Unmute, please, Bu.
Thank you, Pak Jeko. Also, thank you to Ibu Elidia Praptanti for your question. I don't think I have the expertise to answer to this from a theological perspective. But and also maybe I'm not talking about a green or cultural movement as such, because I don't know really if there is a unified movement. But I do know that Indonesia has a very deeply rooted consciousness about spirituality and ecology, the connection between spirituality and ecology. I think it is very important for us to document, to understand that before it disappears. In many places, it is almost lost. And every ethnic group has a very rich root that can illuminate the future of sustainable development and the future of human consciousness, and can become contextual. So I think it's very important that we focus on understanding that again today and bringing it into context. I hope that gives a bit of an answer. Thank you.
Thank you, Bu.
Yeah, okay, thank you, Ibu Kiki. Maybe for the last, I think we have Pak Diki Sofian also here. Maybe Pak Diki want to add something? Please, Pak.
Hi, thanks, Jeko. I'm actually not camera ready, but yeah, thank you very much for the presentation and discussion. And as Pak Didi was earlier saying, that the hardware of ecological sustainability in Asia is to me very visible and very clear and evident self-evident. I think if we were to focus and look and examine, the cultural mindsets and the rituals, the festivities in various parts of Asia, I think it would be fairly easy for us to see how, these sort of motivations from within the people in terms of ecological sustainability is actually embedded in many of their cultural practices. I mean, we've done research in at least 5 countries, looking at nature and culture, and looking at rituals and cultural festivities and how they relate to ecological conservation and management of natural resources and all. And so I think Asia is really a hotbed for this so-called hardware of ecological sustainability. I must say that this is not my original terminology. It was actually from Nakamura Sensei, who initially coined the term hardware of sustainability based on his work in the Biwako region in Middle Japan, which is sort of the largest lake system in Japan, where I did my research as well within the framework of the Asian Public Intellectuals Fellowship Program. But then it was also developed by Dr. Zida Muhammad from University of Malaya, who also looked into the idea of hardware of ecological sustainability. The idea behind the hardware is essentially to sort of distinguish between the different systems of knowledge and systems of thinking and mental models in terms of looking at ecological sustainability. So if one were to distinguish hardware from, let's say, the hardware, so the hardware is really the sort of scientific knowledge on the environment, on the ecology, on the ecosystem, and so on, while the software is much more related to policies and regulatory frameworks that govern certain ecosystems and ecological environmental spaces. So the hardware really looks into the sort of more individuated level of sort of motivations why people would want and desire to have ecological sustainability and to manage the environmental spaces in a more sustainable manner. So that is really the sort of basic premise of my article in that book. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Pak Diki. So I think we have come to the end of our discussion. And next week we have Wednesday forum with the topic progressive Muslim environmentalism. The speaker will be Ali Ilham Al-Mujadi, CRCS alumni, and we expect all of you may participate, may join us in the next Wednesday forum. Once again, thank you for Ibu Kiki, Pak Didi, also all participants, Pak Ancu and Pak Diki. Thank you so much. Salam sehat semuanya.
Terima kasih, thank you.
Thank you banget Mbak Kiki, Pak Didi.
Terima kasih Pak Jeko, Pak Samsul, Pak Diki, Mbak Kiki, Mbak
Pengen
Ida.
belajar lebih jauh Mbak Ibu.
Mbak Ida yang paling banyak kontak saya ini.
Terima kasih Pak Didi. Saya jadi panggil Pak Didi sekarang.
Gak apa-apa, nama baru
Terima
ya.
kasih banyak. Mbak Kiki, matur nuwun.
Sami-sami, matur nuwun Mbak Ida.
Mari.
Izin ya, terima kasih.
Ya,
Sehat
jaga
selalu
kesehatan
Bapak Ibu.
selalu.
Ya, Mas Abdi, makasih Mas Abdi.
Matur nuwun Pak Didi.
Ya.